sticking around. Hope you were as moved as was. Thank you, Jo, very much for that very moving documentary. Patrick, Anna, Daniel, who's not with us, but well, we saw the message. So we have Patrick, Jerry, local resident, member of the campaign, Jo, Anna. Yeah, it's more of an informal conversation, I guess, but I picked up a few things. Well, first of all, Patrick, congratulations on the dancing skills. I didn't know that.
I'm still taking lessons.
Yeah, so, you know, if we take kind of that scene as a metaphor of a place that is supposed to be a bingo, but it's way more than a bingo, how would you define in your own words what the palace was, or what it is, and what it means to you?
Well, you know, when I got the palace, it had only been opened as another bingo club for 14 months. It was actually in receivership. The entire shopping centre was quite derelict at the time. It was nice to see Lucy there, because there was me and Lucy and not a pile of other people. And the palace became a focal point for everyone, but for bingo players across London of every culture, if you like, because everybody was welcome. We operated the place in a very humane way, and it was nice to see some people in the film actually say, you know, they'd come with problems, and in actual fact, the other people around them helped them to get on with their lives, from alcoholism, mainly driven out of loneliness. And the dreadful thing about the redevelopment of the Elephant is anybody with an ounce of common sense could have replaced everything that was in the Elephant and still do the development. I'm not sure if you're all aware of that, but we could have been located the other side of the railway, where Sainsbury's is now and beyond, right? And they could have still done the development of the Elephant. It was just bad planning, it was greed, it was absolute no consideration for the community and the people in the area. And it's so sad. It was a wonderful 20 years for me, and you know, I'm rather proud of the film, not the dancing, but the film, the bingo operation, because it wasn't just bingo, it was so much more, and I hope that came out of the film. I think it did.
Absolutely. And I was thinking, and I was watching, there was these other I mean, you've seen the size of that place, right? But there's also the bowling alley that is not in the film, but it was also very popular among students, and it was very affordable as well.
The whole thing about it, you know, when they were talking about the pound dinners, that was just lunchtime, but what we had was we had a very fair policy. If you looked on that closing night, there was 2,000 people there, and you could see the number of spare seats because we had capacity for 3,000, even though legally we could only have 2,200. We did that to give people space. It was where people came, they sat down, they didn't argue over seats, they would make friends. It was just like, I know in Ireland we call it céilín, and you would just go and visit your neighbour, and that's the way it was within the club. So it's absolutely something which it's just been lost, which is the really sad thing about the whole caboodle. But the only thing is that now that the pandemic's over, and hopefully it is over, and they've got the development, it would be interesting to see if Southwark Council would ever consider giving space to let a development like the Elephant redevelop again, not as this modern development, but you know, the past wasn't so bad. It wasn't beautiful. It does something. I don't know if you noticed those ugly holders that we put very expensive tablets into. And everybody said to me, why have you got this ugly thing in the middle of the table? I said, it's like having an ugly wife, she'll always stay with you. Nobody nicked them. Sorry if that's a... or husband, yeah, it doesn't make it. But for Because, to be quite honest with you, we didn't have any crime there. You can look at 2,000 people, right? I want anybody to give me the right answer here. I will give you a £20 note if you can tell me how many security people in the 20 years we had in the bingo.
0.
Who said that? You've got £20. Absolutely 0. Because if you notice the way the bingo was run, those people just did not want, they were all members. It was just incredible. Now the bowling was a slightly different kettle of fish, but you're absolutely right. The bowling was priced cheaper than anywhere else in London. We did bargains and we did deals for families. So yes, I come out of it. They had to buy me out of it. And I come out with some money, not as much as what the businesses were worth. You never do. But the reality is that I hope that in the 20 years I was there, that I did contribute an awful lot to not only the Elephant Castle and the community, but to the Latino community also.
Thank you, Patrick. Jo, when did you first visit the shopping centre, and when was that moment in which you saw kind of, there's a film here, and yeah, the process, if you want to tell us.
Yeah, sure. I feel I would have loved to meet the director of ÉLEFAN as well and talk to him, because I reckon we probably were having similar thoughts around similar times. And since I've lived in London, I've been in South London, and I first started living really close to the shopping centre, so, and I've always been around the area, so it's kind of a part of your life, isn't it, when you live in South London, whether you're spending time there or passing through or going there. We used to go to the bowling as well. So, and it was always closing down, so I just thought in my head, I would like to try and document that, and it took a few years to decide what bit of it, because it's very big, there's so many different communities. I mean, it's obviously really important to the Latin community, but it was just so interesting how many different groups were using it so regularly. And I hadn't been in the bingo because it's members only. It was only going in the bowling, and then I took the time to go in the bingo and saw how big it was and how busy it was. I thought that would be a good kind of precinct to tell the story through, and obviously Patrick, who's a wonderful character and person, and the way you sort of, it was very much your business and you set the tone in that, so I thought you need a couple of voices to explain what's happening as it was going through. Yeah, and filmed it obviously pre-pandemic, and then it just closed down just before the pandemic, didn't it? So did all the footage in 2019, and then waited for a while, tried to get funding, didn't manage that, and then sort of edited it together slowly over the next year and brought it out a couple of years later.
Right.
Yeah.
You obviously showed it a few times already, apart from the Cinema Museum, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So I'm curious to know, people that may not be that familiar with the area, what's their take, and if they knew of it, and you know, like if it means that much as it means to people that sort of have lived in South London or...
Yeah, that's been such an amazing part of the process to think, because you start by thinking, okay, I'd like to document something that's happening in my local area and something that's important to people here, but it has translated, and there's film festivals. It really surprised me, the film festivals that picked it up, but all over the world. I mean, America, wherever, Africa, Spain, all over the place, and you know, they have full subtitles, but there are clearly universal themes in there that people are relating to about loneliness, gentrification, community, and like losing spaces to be together in a kind of way. Also, that generation, it was really nice for me to see it. I think they're so in person, that's their thing. It's just about being with each other and being face to face, and that's why somewhere like that was so important for them. So yeah, it has, and it's still luckily, because it got some recognition, and now as part of the BAFTA nomination it's in a tour that is still getting shown in festivals around the world, and I'm getting emails saying, yeah, it's being shown in Africa or Spain or somewhere like that. So, and they're choosing it, they're seeing it, choosing it for their audiences. So yeah, clearly the Elephant has a big pull to people who...
Such a pleasure then to have it tonight. Again, there's some sort of common topics, obviously, between what was going on in the bingo and what was going on, you know, the rest of the shopping centre, let's say, in terms of people coming to meet and telling you the problems. You know, been around your shop many times, and I've seen you a bit like a therapist in a sense. No, how was that relationship with clients that were, you know, more than clients? Yeah, well, now, before and now.
Yeah. There's a lot of people. For me, it was very, very sad. You know, because I was there for more than 8 years, and I saw a lot of customers that when they used to be when I been to the bingo, and when I saw now the field, I said, oh my God, this lady was my customer, and they when they finished the bingo was finished, and they been downstairs, they sit down in my shop, and they start to talk with me, and they said, I am very sad because the shopping center is going to be closed. What are you going to do? I will lose my life. To be honest, a lot of people was very, very sad, and we miss a lot the shopping center. Because not only was a Latin community, it was as well Jamaican, and a lot of communities there, and that's why it was very sad that we lost the shopping center.
And how did you feel the transition?
Okay, we were in the middle of the pandemic, there many things happened, and I was in very prime location. I was behind the bingo, and a lot of people cross every day. And now we are very, I think we are high, and we don't have much. We are no. I think we lost a lot of customers, and sometimes people just pass and they realize that we are there. They say, I was looking for you, and finally I found you. I'm very happy, and they start to talk about their experience before the shopping center closed. And yeah.
Another thing that I wonder is both, you know, for the shopping center and the bingo in particular is because obviously these, you know, once place closes, people still have the need to socialize and, you know, be around and mingle. Where do these mingling happen today, if they do?
I have a coach coming up tomorrow morning. Since we closed on the last Sunday of every month, we have a coach which runs from the ÉLEFAN Castle to Great Yarmouth. So it's a day out for them, and that will run tomorrow morning as well. During the summer months, the coach is full, 3/4 full tomorrow morning. The interesting thing is, I would have thought something like 60 or 70% of the people on the coach go absolutely nowhere anymore. They've just stopped playing bingo, they've stopped going out in many cases, and they just come on the coach. So what it must be like for everybody else, I think we have to accept the fact that, yes, COVID, I want you to understand something, that the biggest fight we had on our hands, and I think Lucy mentioned it there, was the fact that they kept saying we were closing. Like, I refurbished in 2006, and I met the man at a funeral yesterday, as it happens, who did the refurbishment for me, and he said, I was pondering whether to do it. This is in 2006, and in the end I said, look, they keep talking, and I'm going to need another refurbishment by the time they actually close it, and I did, as it happens. But the reality is that fighting that and having to pay, everybody thinks maybe that the rents were cheap or something. I don't know what they were for everyone. I'm not going to give it £20 this time, but would anybody like to hazard what the rent was? For me at the ÉLEFAN, it was £1 million a year. The service charge was over £200,000, and that's before I switched on a light or paid a member of staff or anything. So we were very busy, and we kept our prices down. But the ÉLEFAN Castle, I mean, what has happened just should never, ever have happened. And we haven't got anybody here from the council tonight, have we? No, I don't think we ever will.
There was something interesting in the, I think one of the people you interviewed says the Conservative government, and I was thinking, but this is and was and is a Labour administration. Jerry, I see you nodding.
Exactly, and I noticed that as well. And I think both these films should be compulsory viewing for every member of the planning committee before they make these kind of decisions. because I don't know how familiar you are with the planning process. Hopefully not familiar at all. It's dreadful. But local councillors make these decisions on the basis of reports, things presented to them this high, and they make these decisions according to what they're told by their council officers should be done. And while I've no doubt that many of them enter their careers as politicians with the best intentions, they gradually drift away. They gradually drift away and they lose contact with the reality of development such as this. And what Patrick says is entirely true. Delancey could have made this development and included everyone. Southwark had a slogan, nobody left behind. I think anybody seeing this film knows that slogan isn't being fulfilled. But Southwark Council, as the local planning authority, could have insisted that the bingo hall was retained, that more was done for the Latin American community. And part of the reason that the legal case was taken against, and it was taken against Southwark, not Delancey, it was taken against Southwark, part of the reason, although the ostensible issue was the lack of social housing, there's only going to be 116 social rented units in this vast development, by the way. Although ostensibly the legal issue was the social rented housing, it could not have got as far as it did, and it went to the appeal court. It could not have got as far as it did without the broader support of the whole community, including the traders, including the Latin American community, and including, I don't know if Patrick wants me to say this, but including Patrick's support. He actually supplied us with a venue where we could hold our meetings. And it's a curious thing, but the community started to come together when the community was being taken apart. I think that's one of the lessons of these regenerations. The community comes together, I'm afraid, when it's all a little bit too late. But it's not over yet. I don't know if Latin Elephant and Southwark Law Centre are still fighting on for traders who, believe it or not, even 2 years after the closure of the shopping centre, still have not been relocated, including Cesaro, actually.
Yeah, there's I guess one big business missing, which is La Bodeguita. I'm sure most or everyone knows or heard about it. That also was 20 years around and still to this day hasn't been kind of agreed on relocation. There's a space, but there's tough negotiations with the developer. And it's an ongoing thing, obviously, because even though planning is over, I think Anna was mentioning in the film how, in 5 years' time, I think that's what you said. And it's been 2 years, so it should be 3 more, but it depends on how long the new town centre takes. The thing is that one of the things that we campaign for is to have what's called the first refusal option, so that whenever the retail part of the new development is up for bidding, in priority is offered to those displaced traders, because in the case of Anna and others, Castle Square is a temporary place. They, in theory, would have to, vacate that place because it won't be there, and would have priority to come back. But that will be another, even though it's in writing, that big document, it will be another kind of fight, I guess, to put. How hopeful are you for that? Sorry to put you on the spotlight, that we discussed it.
No, I'm very hopeful. I have a lot of hope. Yes, because we at the moment we don't have the same customers. You can talk with we have 20 traders there, and every single day we try to open our business, and we try to use now social media. We try to every day improve our business, but that's why we are there, because we have hope that we can come back to the town center in the future. Otherwise, we will just close our business. This is our big hope.
Yeah, and something also, a more positive note, as a community, we continue to be together and be around, not physically in the same place. Obviously, it doesn't exist. But for instance, I understand Patrick still goes to Lucy's every now and then,
Yes,
right? In her new shop. Which I guess is a sign. That's what I'm saying. Yes. You used to go just downstairs, and now but you still.
The fact of the matter is that as a community, yes, you've been devastated, but the only thing is, I wouldn't give up all hope yet. What's there is there. Don't blame Delancey. I have to say my dealings with Delancey were very professional. I hold Southwark Council 100% responsible for everything that has happened. What Jerry has just said is just so true, right? Any of them without common sense would never have allowed this to happen. They would have allowed the development to happen, but only when they had brought everybody, all of the people in those two films with them. And we could still have had everything we had. The fact of the matter is that there are some facts. One is that bingo doesn't get the best press in the world. It is still seen as something, and it's seen as something that poorer people would play, or immigrant people would play, or whatever. Unless you're an Arab or something, then you might go to a casino, which has got a much smarter image, but in actual fact it's very hard gaming. The reason that you have to remember that between the bingo and the bowling, it brought 12,000 people a week into the shopping centre, and that was a huge. And once we closed, it really did devastate the shops, right? And so whatever happens, and whenever you're having your discussions with the council, and hopefully the Latino community and the community locally, so to speak, will regroup and maybe get some other area that can be developed almost to replicate what the Elephant was. That you have to put something in the heart of it that will attract a large number of people, because businesses cannot survive just on passing trade. And I think Lucy would tell you that now, even where she is, right? So the fact of the matter is, you have to have something. And I have to tell you, if I said, I go into the new development up there with a casino, do you know they would welcome me with open arms, right? But the fact of the matter is, you say, I will put the largest bingo club in the UK into it, right? Nah, it doesn't have the image somehow. And to a certain extent, you are not only fighting the developers, you are fighting a mentality to where they in actual fact think, and I have to say it, we can criticize me for it if you like, I mentioned it in my film, immigrant people do come to this country, right, and they work. I think that was very clear from the young lads, even though I was following the subtitles, right, they're prepared to work. We work very, very hard, but I have to say you have to work a lot harder because of your background to achieve the same thing. I'm sorry if not everybody agrees with that, but that is the reality of the situation. So I would say to you, have hope, have faith, get going again, and if you want a large bingo club, you know where to find me.
Well, interestingly, there was some provision in the application, still is, for a leisure facility. I think there's a vague term that would end up providing an IMAX to a nightclub. We don't know, but there is something to replace.
There is a provision for first refusal, I think is what they call it, to a bingo operator. Once, of course, that particular building, wherever it's going to be in the development, is built. And this is possibly a problem for somebody like Patrick. They can't hang around waiting for it to happen. And I guess that's one big aspect of these regenerations which nobody takes sufficient, I don't believe, sufficient notice is taken on. Just well, actually Patrick's mentioned it, just how long they take. This has been going on for over 25 years, and it's going to go on for another decade before we see something that might approach completeness of the Elephant Castle. And for all that time, the people living and working within a regeneration area are having to live with the uncertainty of what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and is there going to be room in it for me? And of course, when they approach their council, or even the developers or the representatives of the developers, they're always reassured, oh yeah, no, don't worry about it. But I'm afraid once the developer, and I'm going to be a bit harsher on Delancey than Patrick is, once the developer gets hold of that planning permission, everything changes. The balance of power, it's like a seesaw. Once the local authority, before the application is approved, has the power. Once the developer gets the application approved, the developer has the power. And I'm afraid one thing we're seeing at the Elephant and Castle at the moment is it is becoming a developer's town almost. Two big, they're like barons really, Delancey and then Lease. And Southwark Law Centre and Latin Elephant have been doing a terrific job trying to negotiate, trying to advocate on behalf of the very sizable Latin American community and other traders, I should say, and other people who still live here, still work here, trying to negotiate with the developers. And you would have thought, maybe, that they would be able to count on the support of Southwark Council, given everything that's happened. But I have to say, very disappointingly, but maybe not surprisingly, they cannot. It is a battle. It's a battle all the time to get any support, and maybe we'll hear from Harps and others about this. It is a battle to get any support from Southwark Council against, if I can put it that way, the developer. They are very much of the developer's mindset that what is being done now at the Elephant and Castle is all for the good. And when I said I think films like this should be compulsory for them, I wasn't joking. They should be, because frankly, as far as the people who took the decisions about this development were concerned, the bingo hall and all the people who used it didn't exist, and nor did the Latin American community.
Yeah, that's a very powerful one. It certainly looks like a very, very powerful way to put across a message that we try to do in various ways during the campaign, in terms of for the local authority to understand that this was way more than a shopping centre or a bingo. And I wonder, what did you learn in that process as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I was disappointed. I think I set out with ambitions that I could make something to document that could even, naively, that it could help join with the campaign and other campaigns to just show. But the time, it takes time, and it closed. I wasn't expecting for it to close. That unfolded, and I got 2 weeks in the end. My filming was cut shorter than I hoped, but it's true what Jerry was saying. I was just thinking at the time, it does feel like it's such a slow battle, and they sort of win just by the prolonging it, really. And it's kind of things are said, and then it just goes on and goes on. And I remember watching the appeal not go through and being really surprised, and then maybe thinking, well, you've obviously been doing for much longer, and maybe we're less surprised. But that just the sheer length of time, it's like the amount of energy that everyone needs to bring and just keep bringing, and to keep trying to fight for the right decisions for the community. So I found that really hard to watch, and then ultimately decided that what I've recorded was a good record. And there was a similar shopping centre, I think, in Tottenham that some people were speaking to me about that.
Seven Sisters, you mean?
Seven
Market,
Sisters, and just different things that might be going on around the city that people can draw a comparison with. So maybe things like these films could be helpful for them, but in terms of helping specific, who knows?
Patrick?
Two questions that I think still need asking, right? Who are Delancey and perhaps Lend-Lease as well? Where are they registered? And the other thing is, where did the money come from? Southwark Council was never able to really answer that. But one little snippet I will give you, on the film you will see that I said I tried negotiating an extension, right? And I said, look, can I just speak to somebody who's a director who can make a decision here, right? And they said, you have to fly to Canada, to Toronto, and then take another 3-hour flight from there. So I wasn't told where it was, but that's how difficult it was just to have a meeting with the director. That wasn't that he was going to meet me, that's the distance I would have to travel. So we never really found out who all of these people are, and certainly we never found out where they got the billions of pounds for. But it was said in one meeting from memory that it didn't matter, they had the money. Right? You try opening up a bank account and say to the bank, doesn't matter. I've got the money, right? And see how you get on. So it seems to me that there, in certain circles and councils, and I don't want to mention the word corruption, but there is certainly a blind eye turned to a lot of practices that wouldn't be acceptable for you or me.
I'm sure we can discuss long about certain images that come to mind, especially at planning, very late nights. Yeah, closed door meetings, and suddenly the accountability not being really there. But I'm keen to hear about, the rest of the people here. Comments, questions about the films.
Or about us, if you think if we did the right thing, we fight hard enough.
It's alluded to in the film, in the bingo film, about the food in the bingo hall. And I went last week, and I was struck, first of all, how good the food was, how cheap it was, and how diverse it was as well. You had the British section and the Chinese section as well. And I wondered how that came about and when it came about.
I have to say that two of the biggest bingo clubs in the country, one was at Cricklewood and the other was me, and I opened the one in Cricklewood and I ended up coming here. The thing about it is that even if you go to Great Yarmouth now, it won't be the same food, but you will find that it's one of my, if you like, hallmarks on my business is that we always produce very, very reasonably priced food, but good food. And it was one of the big core things in the ÉLEFAN, in the bingo club, that attracted so many people. But, my philosophy always has been, if Granny came and had her lunch for £1 and had a nice afternoon very cheaply, usually the daughter, the granddaughter, the son-in-law and whatever, all came. It was not unusual to have 3 or 4 generations of the same family in at night, but it is just one of the hallmarks of the Palace brand that was there, and it was in response to the clientele we had. So therefore, we tried to serve our customers the best possible way, and the important thing was that people felt at home. The food was in actual fact a reflection usually on their culture, so I hope that's what you found.
Absolutely.
But thank you.
That's exactly our main argument when we were basically pushing for cap in the rent and the new or the relocation sites. It was because it was still serving the local community that needed affordable meals, goods. You would be surprised how a surprise it seems this argument to certain officers and councillors, as if they didn't know exactly what communities are, mainly working class communities in the area. But that's exactly what it was, serving the community. Yeah.
I think it was created by the community. I think that's completely forgotten. The image of the ÉLEFAN Castle was that the image of the castle was a place that was, had gone downhill a long time ago, and that the only way of remedying that was regeneration. But I think what the film about the Latin American community shows that wasn't the case at all. These weren't bad businesses. These were successful businesses. But I'm afraid Delancey came in and rode upon that idea. They made a very bold statement when they put in their planning application about the traders who were already at the ÉLEFAN Castle. They said, I'm paraphrasing, they said, these traders have enjoyed low rents, they said. They have enjoyed low rents for many, many years, and they will not be able to continue that into the future. It is best for them to consider moving elsewhere. It was 2 sentences or so, and that was that. So I think, while we are obviously all pretty upset actually about what's happened at the Elephant Castle, we shouldn't forget that those people that were relocated, Delancey had no intention whatsoever of relocating them. They had no intention whatsoever of relocating them, and it was only the campaigning work of Southwark Law Centre up the Elephant and Latin Elephant that got what we did get. So it did achieve that much, including, and I would include in that campaign, films like this, because when you campaign, you attract attention, people want to know what's going on, and thankfully we have talented filmmakers like Jo who want to get involved as well and produce films like this. So yeah, I would echo what Patrick has to say. It isn't all doom and gloom. People do come together when they're being taken apart, and I think that's the big lesson for us going forward, as they say.
And the other thing you have to remember is there anything wrong? Like at the moment, because the fuel went up, the government are able to cap, right, the electricity prices. What was wrong with capping the housing, the business rates? What is wrong with, if you've got a community which are not high earners, 60, 80, 100,000 a year, having places where the rents are not so high in order to be able to create a very positive community. And I'm not a socialist, I'm a capitalist. Sorry? Yeah, maybe I'm a capitalist with a socialist conscience. But the reality is, for what was at the Elephant, if we did, if you think £1 million is a cheap rent, well then that's fine. But I can assure you, I woke up many a morning worrying about the rent, right? But the fact of the matter is that places like the Elephant must exist in this day and age, and must exist in the communities here in South London. And if they've got space to develop it, fine, but they made very little effort. What they offered me was down the Old Kent Road, behind some car wash or something, you know, where nobody could get to. So it is. But at the same time, if I was you, I would remain very, very positive. Unfortunately, I'm reaching an age where you can't be too positive, because it does take time, in actual fact, to do things. But there is great potential there, and I think the Elephant proved it. But enough said from me.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to share a little something. I was one of the personnel as well who has business 1994 there, but not in the shopping center. I was in front of the shopping center. That little elephant is mean for us, everything. Because when we saw that elephant, we knew we were in the right place. When we didn't speak English, elephant es elefante in Espanol. And we were asking people, elefante, elefante. And they told us, because they didn't understand us, elephant, yes, elephant. And we were arriving in the same place. And when they removed that elephant, we cried. In Facebook, we shared when they removed that elephant. That elephant meant a lot for us. Because it's our sign we were in the right place.
Thank you. Just to add on that, I think that's probably the reasoning behind the name of Daniel's documentary, ÉLEFAN, the way it's written, because it's the way it sounds when most Latin Americans would refer to Elephant Castle without the T, which it sounds beautiful. So yeah, absolutely, it's an icon. And funny enough, it's still there. It's on the top of Castle Square, only not in a plinth, so not very visible, really. You wonder why it's been a bit made invisible. Anyone else? After that, difficult. Otherwise, we can just. Oh yes.
Sorry, just one quick question, because I didn't get one thing from the field until from you guys. It's probably because I got distracted or something like that. But you were saying that you're going to move to another shopping center. Are they going to develop a new shopping center in the place where the former was? Is it right?
Yes, so it's called a new town center. It's supposed to be finished 5 years after it started, so in 2025, but it might be more. And it's actually a housing site because they're planning to have 979 luxury flats, out of which 116 will be possibly, hopefully, social rent equivalent. There will be a leisure facility, it could be a bingo, it could be a cinema. There will be a new campus for the University of West London, which is across the road. Am I missing something, Jerry? Well, and obviously some retail offer. 10% of which will be affordable and offered in priority to those displaced from the original shopping center. But all of these is written in such a vague terms that you know, down the line we need to see how much of that is delivered.
Yeah, and because it's curious that developers and specifically like urbanists and architects are always trying to design the way how people should live, but misunderstanding some other dynamics. And in the tour today, the speaker said that everything flourished because rents went low in 1994. So many of some other businesses that are not highly profitable, as we can saw in the shopping mall, they decided to flourish probably because of the rents and because the community started to demand those services. But if they are going to like introducing new people who are demanding new services, who are demanding new goods, how would they like just try to get in the like the same services if they're, I mean, if the people wouldn't be like the same? So it's I don't know, but probably there will be like many other dynamics that will shape the future of ÉLEFAN, and it's sad because probably what we have in our memories is not going to be as it was like the future, because I think that world just doesn't work like that. You know, you can't oblige people to act in a way or just oblige them to act in the same way when you just change the whole context, the whole situation and dynamics of the game. I know that sounds, for me in that side of this, yeah, as listener, doesn't sound like really really true, like that it won't be true for me.
I think it's an ongoing dynamic.
The future is ahead of us, yeah, definitely. I think, to put it politely, the demographic of the Elephant Castle is changing as anybody goes onto Elephant Park can see, from both the people who live in the flats, which cost a lot of money, and the shops that are now there to serve those people who live in the flats. Delancey know their business. They at least know their business. They know what they're creating here. They're creating a sort of virtuous circle where they have relatively affluent people who will spend money in shops to serve them and services to serve them. At the same time, the wider Elephant Castle has still got many people who aren't that affluent. We still have lots of housing estates. We're in the middle of one. We have this by courtesy of the Draper Tenants and Residents Association. So it is still a very mixed community, and it is up, frankly, for people to assert themselves, to make sure that the kind of interests, their interests, are served in the future, even if they're not being terribly well served at the moment. But it is, yeah, it is in the future. It is still all to be fought for.
Yeah, and finally, not all the land is owned by, thankfully, Delancey and Lend-Lease, a big part of it, but most of the arches are owned by the art company. Don't know if they're the lesser even in this case, but there's still relatively affordable rents there, and yeah, the relocation sites still have affordable rent. So yeah, it will always be a matter of, you know, pushing and fighting for it. So obviously nothing is going to be for granted. But yeah, like Jerry said, it's a matter of, I guess, to me, it's very important to a day like today to celebrate the memory and capture the cultural memory, because to understand what happened will allow us to see what lessons have we learned. Even if your documentary could be useful for other campaigns in our part of London, even if the planning is over here, it will still be a great legacy. So yeah, I'm definitely looking ahead rather than understanding and learning from the past, but trying to see what we can still as a community achieve, because that development still needs to be designed. Well, yeah, thank you for sticking around. It's been amazing that we can't do these events without this number of people, and yeah, it's great that you are part and that you participate and that you hopefully discuss among each other. There's some wine and tapas. We can stay around for another half hour if you want, just informally continue this conversation. And thanks to Jo, Danielle, Patrick, Jerry, Anna, the rest of the fiction.